One of my regular viewers, they emailed this story to me late yesterday afternoon. The subject line of the email was, "You might not want to touch this." He sent me a link to an article from Yahoo, but this story actually originated from The Athletic. Have you guys ever heard of Cynthia Cooper Dyke? Some consider her to be the Michael Jordan of the WNBA. She is a legend in women's basketball. After her career in the WNBA, she moved on to coaching at the college level. And that is where the trouble begins. The Athletic, they conducted an extensive investigation into the coaching career of Cynthia Cooper. This had to have taken them months to put together. Hell, it took me 30 minutes to read it. The Athletic, they conducted interviews with about 25 former players, parents of former players, former staff, about the behavior of Cynthia Cooper during her coaching career. Now, of course, the majority of these people, the majority of these allegations, they're coming from anonymous sources. And you guys know how I just love my anonymous sources. My thinking is, if you're going to accuse someone of something, put your name on it. Don't throw the rock and hide your hand. Everyone has the right to defend themselves against allegations. It's kind of hard to do that when you don't know who's accusing you. You know, there seems to be this trend that's developing in women's sports. We don't see this very often in men's sports, but we're starting to see it more and more in women's sports. Players accusing coaches of verbal abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse. With stories like this, I generally think that the truth tends to fall somewhere in the middle. I tend to believe that accusations, they're not as bad as the players make them sound, and they're not as minor as the coach tries to downplay them. Now, I'm not going to sit here and just blindly defend Cynthia Cooper Dyke. I don't know if these allegations, I don't know if they're true or not. Now, I will say, a lot of these allegations, it just seems to me like typical locker room talk. Shit you commonly hear in locker rooms with men. I'm going to lay out for you some of these allegations against Cynthia Cooper, and I want you guys to decide. I want you guys to tell me whether this qualifies as verbal abuse or whether it's just harmless locker room talk, harmless joking. Now, of course, I'm going to sprinkle my opinion here and there, and I'll give you my thoughts on this too. But let's go ahead and get started. While coaching at UNC Wilmington between 2010 and 2012, a handful of former players accused Cynthia Cooper Dyke of talking too much about sex. They say Cynthia Cooper said wet wet after a made shot, and then said, "I bet that's what Betty was doing last night." Now, the original name was redacted by The Athletic. I just made up the name Betty. But either way, I'm struggling to understand the abuse here. Seems to me like a coach fucking with her players. Former players at multiple programs say that Cynthia Cooper designed a play called Hot Sex. This made me extremely uncomfortable. All right, I guess. Okay, anyway, moving on. During the 2012-13 season at Texas Southern, they accused Cynthia Cooper of calling players bitches, pussies, and dumbasses. Well, they must not watch this fucking channel. I use all three words on a daily basis when describing social justice warriors. At one point, Cynthia Cooper, she had a male assistant coach, and he was constantly bitching and complaining about long practices affecting his social life. "These long practices, they are affecting my masturbation schedule. I'm going to bed late, having to wake up early. I'm just so exhausted. I'm not feeling well." Cynthia Cooper, being the nice woman she was, she wanted to console her assistant coach. So she got down on her knees in front of all the players and did her best impression of Adam Silver and pretended to perform fellatio on him. Now, the only difference between Cynthia Cooper and Adam Silver, Cynthia Cooper was pretending. Adam Silver actually gives world-class fellatio to his daddy, Xi Jinping. Now, during her stint at USC, Cynthia Cooper got pissed off because one of her players wasn't practicing up to standards. She punished the player by having her do defensive slides. After several minutes, the player claimed that she just couldn't handle it anymore. Cynthia Cooper, she's like, okay, go run instead. The player starts crying. How dare you treat me this unfairly? Cynthia Cooper, she forced her to complete the drill while saying, this is what happens when you're fucking retarded. The player becomes so enraged that she starts punching the wooden bleachers. A couple of players commented to The Athletic, we had to run over and stop her from harming herself while our coach just stood there not doing shit. What the fuck was Cynthia Cooper supposed to do? Hey, stop breaking your hands over there. What is she supposed to do? Another former player at USC said, there wasn't a day that went by that I didn't think about taking my own life. I even dreamed about doing it at Cynthia Cooper's house so she could see the damage that she caused me. You know, I've been pissed off at a lot of people in my life. I have been pissed off with the way former bosses have spoken to me or yelled at me. We have all had people in our lives that we didn't feel treated us fairly. We didn't like the way they spoke to us. But I have never reached a point where someone else has had enough power over me that they made me want to harm myself. And I'm not trying to downplay the way that young woman felt, but I'm just saying I can't relate to it. Now, there are many other allegations against Cynthia Cooper, but they all relate to the same thing. They all relate to everything I just shared with you. Most of her former players are complaining that she joked too much about sex. One former player complained that she joked about her weight. She said, my hips are big, that I ride too much dick. I was unable to eat food in front of her for the rest of the season. Oh, I was just so triggered by that. Cynthia Cooper told another player that the reason that she ran so slow, she was getting dick down the night before. She was accused of excess punishment. Like I said, all of the allegations center around words. No allegations of physical abuse. All of these allegations are centered around words, or what they're calling verbal and emotional abuse. I read the entire story in The Athletics. Some parts of it I read twice. I mean, it's hard to get the context of it, but it all seemed like typical locker room talk to me. Maybe it's different because it's coming from a woman and being directed at women, but at the same time, I thought women were supposed to be sexually revolutionized. When I read and hear about stories like this, I always view this from a lens of skepticism. The reason being, we are living in a society where a segment of the population is extremely sensitive. Cynthia Cooper's almost 60 years old. She played basketball in the days where nothing was off limits. Coaches would run you until you puked, which is another accusation being leveled against Cynthia Cooper. Coaches would curse players out. Being called a bitch was minimal. Cynthia Cooper, she gave a statement to The Athletic saying all these allegations are untrue. Now, I'm not sure if I entirely believe that, but I could be willing to believe that she was not being malicious. Much of what she is accused of saying, especially in a sexual nature, most of it seems like harmless joking around to me. But as you guys know, you're not allowed to joke around anymore. You may hurt someone's feelings. Like I say all the time, fuck your feelings. We have to get past this point where people are being silenced because it might hurt some virgin's feelings who's living under a bridge in San Francisco, stealing the Wi-Fi from the McDonald's across the street. This is another method they're using to silence speech. We're seeing the same thing happen in stand-up comedy. Will Smith getting into his beta male feelings because Chris Rock made some harmless joke about his wife who was sleeping with half of Hollywood. Social justice warriors have completely ruined stand-up comedy. Have you tried to watch late night shows lately or Saturday Night Live? Jimmy Fallon used to be brilliant. I used to love watching Jimmy Fallon until he became a woke pussy. I used to like Jon Stewart. He has been reduced to constantly apologizing for his white privilege. Hell, I saw someone complaining the other day. I wish I could remember where I saw this. Someone might have told me about it. Hell, it might not even be true. I don't know. Sounds true to me, though. But they were saying Facebook and Instagram demonetized someone's account because they compared women to cats. Facebook deemed it hate speech. Hate speech? Comparing women to cats is hate speech? I guess comparing men to dogs is hate speech too? What the hell's going on here? Do I think Cynthia Cooper, do I think she likely crossed the line at some point during her coaching career? I'm sure she did. I'm sure at some point she took things too far. That tends to happen though with people who like to joke around. Do I think she was abusive? Do I think she was so abusive she bullied someone into thinking about harming themselves? No. That is not a Cynthia Cooper problem. That is a you problem. A lot of these people, they like to hide behind these psychological terms. I'm depressed. I'm suffering from depression. You're not allowed to punish me. I'm bipolar. You are not allowed to say I made a mistake. I'm a social justice warrior. You are not allowed to force me to take a bath. If you are so mentally fragile that you can't take someone yelling at you, don't play sports. You better not play sports. Coaches yell. That's what they do. They're not going to accommodate you because you can't handle it. Coaches, athletes, they talk about sex. That's what they do. One of the players got triggered because Cynthia Cooper called her a virgin. They better not watch this channel. But let me know what you guys think. I know I'm not as sympathetic in situations like this. I know some people, they see it differently than I do. I didn't go into all the allegations. This video would have been a fucking hour long, but I gave you the gist of it. Like I said, what I chose to share with you, the rest of the allegations, pretty much the same thing. What do you think? In a locker room setting or an athletic environment, was Cynthia Cooper's behavior acceptable? You know what's ironic? This is really ironic. They want to talk about sex with your 5-year-old, but when a coach jokes about sex with 18 to 21-year-old young women, they want to pretend like it's taboo. She's taking it too far. Let me know what you think, though. Sound off in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe. Click the notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys tomorrow.